Volumes. My name is Renee McMillan. I am your host, and I am very excited to welcome to the program today author and illustrator Julie Rowan-Zoch. Author, illustrator, bookseller, and activist Julie Rowan-Zoch grew up collecting freckles and chasing hermit crabs in New York and spent years slicing rich breads in Germany before waking up to 300 days of blue Colorado skies. She is the illustrator of Louie, a picture book about a beloved teddy bear that plots an escape from his owner's suffocating affections, the year-by-year board book series, and her most recent book is I'm A Hare, So There, which she wrote and illustrated. When a chipmunk mistakes Hare for a rabbit, Hare puts him in his place. But actually, the chipmunk is a squirrel, or so he says. If you've ever wondered about the difference between a turtle and a tortoise, or a sheep and a goat, this book will delight and educate you with its hilarious look at dynamic duos in the animal kingdom while delivering a gentle lesson on appreciating differences and standing up for what you know to be true about yourself. If you would like to learn more about this book and Julie's other books, you can visit bookshop.org or indiebound.org, and you can also visit Julie's website, julierowanzoch.wordpress.com. It's kind of interesting to be hosting you as, an author when we're friends, but now I'm going into like professional host mode. So let's start off.
Professional too.
Yeah, let's start off pretending that we don't know each other, and start with a question to help us learn a little bit more about who you are. So when did you know that you wanted to be an illustrator, and what kind of brought you to that realization?
I don't, a lot of people say they've always been illustrating or rather drawing all their lives and things like that, but I never really wanted to be an illustrator. In college, I can remember seeing other people's illustrations on the wall who were studying illustration and realizing there was no way I was ever going to be that good. So I studied graphic design, but I always drew. And after my kids were, or rather as my kids were about to leave high school, that's when a friend of mine who was learning to be a creative coach asked if I would be her guinea pig while she was taking a course. So that's how we got started. She said, Julie, you always talked about writing a picture book, which I definitely talked about it, but never really put pen to paper. Right. And so she coached me through getting started, and I stuck with it, and now I'm publishing books. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. I always love those origin stories that, kind of unexpected, And so, so did being, you mentioned that you always wanted to write a picture book. So was the kind of wanting to be an author and a writer, was that more a thing you wanted to do early on?
I think I was just not being ignorant. I didn't know that I could maybe enjoy illustrating somebody else's book. I just figured I'll just keep it my own story, have a little more control. And I thought that for a long time, that I wouldn't want to illustrate somebody else's book, but no, that's actually a lot of fun. So
yeah, we will be coming back to that later too. I mentioned in the introduction, you're an activist. What sort of causes do you support, and do they ever kind of influence your creative endeavors?
Right. Well, Medicare for all is my priority, and I hope that I do see it in my lifetime.
Yeah.
And I think it does influence my writing, not so necessarily the stories themselves, because I try not to be teachy in any way. Mm-hmm. But I think writing and advocating for children is just intersects with that as well, because obviously Medicare for all is for everyone, and that includes children. So cradle to grave.
Yes, yep, all the way, whole journey. All right, another question, again, relating to our lovely introduction. You are a bookseller. We worked for a while side by side as booksellers. Has that kind of enriched your author illustrator experience? Being in a bookstore, has it kind of given you insight into, the things that are popular in the market right now, the kind of stories that people are wanting to read, or, have you gotten any story ideas from seeing your fellow author and illustrators, books, or come up with new art styles you wanted to try from seeing those?
Absolutely. I think the most important part is conducting story time. So having to choose books and decide ahead of time which ones might be appropriate for the age group of kids coming. So I had a lot of toddlers, because most of them are in school during the daytime. I mean, kids that are, say, 4 and older. And even when you think that a book is appropriate for a certain age, it might not be. So it could be just a year's difference that makes all that difference. And sometimes there are books that I thought are so funny, or the illustrations are so great, the kids are going to love this. Mm-hmm. And it would start to wander, so to say. So that's a really good lesson in teaching the writer what kind of stories, what kind of engagement is going to keep them right there. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And how to use them as well. I mean, not just the written word, but how to use the story to engage the kids. That took quite a while. Actually, I concurred a lot with my local children's librarian at the time. Yeah, the head librarian. Unfortunately, she's retired, but I still have her email, so I can always ask her questions. But yeah, that really helped a lot. It also helped to be able to see how books are sold and what people are looking for when they came in, and the differences between a grandmother asking for a book and for as a gift, or a child coming in and looking at books. So
right. Yeah. There's definitely a difference there between what the kid wants and what the parent wants. So yeah.
Nice.
And story time. Yeah, that's kind of great. That had to be like your kind of own, personal like focus group almost. Like if you were like, well, how do they respond to this, and then kind of use that.
Yeah.
So
and I just finished putting together some teacher resources. So a lot of, especially with crafts and things like that. A lot of the things I would do in story time, a lot of games I would play or questions I would ask, it really helped inform what I was going to use for teacher resources too. Even though they were geared towards younger children, at least I could see what might and might not work. And that helped a lot, because that's another skill that you're going to need once the book comes out. So.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And so were these particularly the teacher resources you're talking about, are you making them specifically for your books, or kind of in general, just?
Sometimes the publisher might help out with things like that, but in this case, I just went ahead and made things that interested me, so I could use my own illustrations and I could have a little more control over what was on the page. Yep. So yeah, and luckily I'm in some promotional groups that work together, and we have, in one group, we have a bunch of teachers who've come together to help us figure out what are going to be good resources and why, and what kind of fonts to use and things like that. It's really great.
Yeah. And that's there's so many levels to, publishing, that I think it's really great when you get those groups that every group is represented, so that you can all talk together and really figure out what works best.
And
for
every
everyone.
Group is also concerned with the end customer, so to say. You really want to make sure that it's a great experience for them.
Right. Yeah, definitely. So like I said, this is your first debut author and illustrator book. Again, you mentioned earlier that you've illustrated some books, you haven't written them, and that was really great. What was it like having to write and illustrate a book?
And as far as it being different, and also because I had written the story before I even got the contract to illustrate the other book, but it's the way the pictures play in your head when you're reading a story for the first time, say from another author. It can play out like a movie in my head. I'm a very visual thinker, so I can see what's happening, and actually that helps inform me what kind of story is good, at least for me to be able to write, and also to help other people when I do critiques. If I can see a story play out in my head, then I know it's right. So it was very easy, because for the book that I did with Tom Lewis, it was very easy to see what was going to happen on the page before, and just playing in my head. Whereas when I'm writing, those pictures are still coming together, right? The story's not there yet. So it's a lot, in that sense, it's obviously harder, but you do have, again, some more control over it. Right. But it's a little, I would say it's almost more daunting, because that's also all your responsibility, right? The words and the pictures. It's all yours.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. About how long did it take you to get through I'm a Hare? So there, like kind of from, the very early stages to...
Actually, that came together really quickly, but a friend reminded me that one of my first versions was in rhyme, and I'm not really a rhymer. So I'm glad that that quickly got squashed. But I'm going to say it was about 2 months of writing and tweaking before I sent it back to my editor. We did make some changes, because I did, in the first version, kind of kill off the main character. We decided not to go that direction.
Yeah, That's not as a popular a thing, I think, in children's books as it is other books. Yeah.
We did come up with a much better answer, and it's much, much funnier now. So I'm really glad she steered me in the right direction. So that's one of the other things is, so not only do I write with myself, I write with my critique partners because they're going to give me the tweaks and perks or pokes that help me put it together. And then I take it to my agent, who again will ask me questions to help me guide myself in that direction. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. As all good editors should, kind of just nudge you in the right direction. Yeah. Can you kind of touched on it a little bit, but can you kind of explain how it works when you're illustrating someone else's book, like a story that you didn't write? Because I think some people they kind of just don't understand how that happens. So if you could kind of just give a little summary.
Well, I was given the manuscript to read first. Then I was asked if I liked the manuscript, would I do a few sketches, because they didn't want to, I guess they wanted to leave their options open as far as who might meet that sweet note with the illustrations. So, but also was offered money in case that didn't work out. So if I wasn't chosen, so that was very nice. But so once I was chosen for it, then I started sending more character sketches so we could really hone down the main character, which is Louis the teddy bear. And then I'm given a certain amount of time to do a dummy. And that just means I sketch out, first I can sketch out really tiny in thumbnails just so I can see how the story flows from page to page. In that little movie that's already been playing in my mind, and then change it accordingly, especially with composition, and make sure the pages flow into each other pretty well. And then once the thumbnails are worked out, then I'll go to slightly bigger dummy. And I generally would do it in pencil, but now that I've been working almost exclusively on Procreate, I do the whole thing in Procreate on the iPad. And then I send those off to the editor, and that's when details get worked out, whether or not it flows for them, whether or not there's room in the right places for the text. And just slowly I start to add a little bit of tone so that we can see approximately how, especially with the composition, how that's going to work. But that only after all those things get finalized do I start final artwork. There are a few, they did ask for 1 or 2 spreads that were in color so that they could show that to the marketing team to show them what it's going to look like going forward. But I did manage to change a little bit of that, so it's not like set in stone that once you give them a colored picture or a finished picture that it has to stay that way. Right. Just to get a feel for what you're going to do. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Then even after you've handed in the final artwork, then there a little more tweaking happens, and then they start printing it on paper so that everybody, and then they'll send me copies so we can see what kind of paper we want to use, how the colors are coming through, and then maybe whatever other changes might still have to be made. So it's not, even though you finish final artwork and that's kind of like, it looks like your deadline at your end of your job, there's still quite a bit more to do. So.
Yeah. It's the deadline to start the other deadline of the final product. Yeah.
And you're lucky if everything stays on the dates that you're hoping for. So,
yes. Yeah. Deadline's a fluid term in the publishing industry, I feel like.
Yeah.
So did you ever meet Tom, who was the author for Louis, or
after the book I'm trying to think, it hadn't released yet, but the first reviews were coming in, and obviously when he got to see his copy, he had questions too about how I illustrated. Obviously, he'd seen it all along, and because of his reputation, he's obviously had a chance to not only give some art notes in the beginning, but also look at sketches in between and make some comments. But they were really minimal. The editor really stood in between the entire time to keep that everything open and free for me. Because any questions, even if he said he wanted something in a certain way, but if I felt strongly against it, she was always open to listen to my vision of the book as well, which is great. And but there weren't very many. It was pretty simple.
Yeah.
And once the reviews came out, he had some questions. So he said, hey, let's have a Zoom call and meet up, which was a little terrifying too, because he does have a fantastic reputation and he's a really great illustrator and writer himself. Mm-hmm. So it was really fun because he asked me a lot of choices that I made, why these particular bookends on the shelf in the child's room, or colors that I used, just what were the thoughts behind it. And that was really nice to have somebody have noticed a lot of things. And even later, after we'd met, he came back with, oh, just now I'm seeing how you lined up certain things in the composition. So I was really lucky with that he was an illustrator, or is an illustrator himself. So there are things that he's going to notice that are different than maybe an author only would notice. So that was a great experience. And then together we decided how we were going to go forward as far as marketing goes. We came up with a couple of promotional materials ourselves, arranged to have a bookshop interview together. And that was really fun. Really, we came up with a poster idea to give out to people who, some of the first buyers in the bookshops and stuff like that. So yeah, it was really fun getting to work with him on a few things. And probably because we both understand design, it made it a lot easier. Yeah. That's probably not a luxury that every illustrator has when they're working with an author. So yeah, that's nice. And I think the reason I wanted to talk to you about that and have you talk about that is I think a lot of people don't realize that, when it's a different author and a different illustrator, they generally, don't meet through the process, which I think kind of sounds, I think when I first heard that, I thought that was kind of like, oh, that seems weird. Like you're working, on the same project together, but you never really talk. But then, through talking to various other illustrators, they kind of gave their, feelings about it too. And I was like, oh, actually, yeah, that makes sense. Because like you said, taking out, you having to discuss it directly, you kind of, you have that middle person to kind of mediate and, handle the, whatever issues come up in a calm and collected manner. In the creative process, when those movies are first playing in my mind of what I see, reading the words, if I already know how another person sees it, my own vision isn't going to come out. Right. So it's kind of robbing the chance. If I've talked to him beforehand, I'd be robbing myself of the chance of just seeing what I would have come up with. Mm-hmm. So it's really good to let that process play out. And if you make changes later, that's fine. But that first process, you're never going to get it back again. Yeah. All right, so let's talk about the actual book, the thing we're here to talk about. Okay. So this is about Hare, and he has feelings about people naming him, I guess. Where did this idea come from to put all these animals together that, are similar but different into a book and kind of just have that be a fun idea to play on? Well, the first germ for the story was an illustration I had done for a contest where we read other people's stories, and then it was an illustration contest. So you read the other stories and you chose from which story you were going to make a cover. And so the Jackrabbit, I think it was Jackrabbit who always, who called Gil a monster. Like instead of the boy who called Wolf, it was the Jackrabbit who called Gil monster. And it was a cute story, but it wasn't mine. But I liked the character and I kept drawing him for other things, just for fun. And my agent said she really liked him and couldn't I write a story just about him? So I took that. I didn't want to obviously use anything in particular from the other person's story. Mm-hmm. So just kind of figured out where jackrabbits hang out first. Mm-hmm. And then knowing that that some of them live in the Sonoran Desert where my parents spend their winters, I thought, all right, let me see if I can focus on the desert and get to draw saguaro cactuses. Mm-hmm. And it just kind of, you sort of just practically plopped him in the desert and let the story go from there. And it really, I hate to say it, but it just came together. So I had the story with Chippy first, and it wasn't as involved with other animals. There were some other animals mentioned, but only a few. Mm-hmm. And then when the editor did buy the story, she asked if I could add not only a few more characters, but also add back matter to the story, which was mind-blowing to me. Why would I put back matter in a fiction story?
Yeah.
But it suited it really well, and I just asked that I didn't have to write huge amounts on animals that I didn't really know very much about, that I'd have to do a lot more research for, and if I could use illustrations to play as back matter.
Yeah.
That's how it kind of came together.
Just I'm actually wearing, you can't see it, but I'm wearing my cactus t-shirt today for the occasion. I was like, what should I wear today? Cactus t-shirt. And speaking of the back matter, it's probably one of my favorite things sometimes about kids' picture books, where it's a great, story and the illustrations are beautiful, but then you also get that bonus at the back. And yours definitely has that. And it's, it's that back matter that isn't just back matter. It also kind of, ties in with the actual book and kind of gets you to go back and look more carefully. Can you kind of tell our, viewers what your back matter kind of is? And
so I did two things, because they gave me the choice between 2 to 5 pages of back matter, and I stuck with the smaller amount since I'd never done it before.
2 is fine.
So on the first page, I chose to highlight different animals that are similar but not the same, and chose ones that will be found in the Sonoran Desert for the most part, and then just looked up for differences, because I needed to find something that was going to be short enough to keep in here. I couldn't have it be a major difference that I would have to write up about. So I did keep it short. And then I came up with the idea to use the same thing for the animals that we did add into the book, since I added quite a few more just as background figures, more or less, background characters. And then just ask the kids to go looking for them. And because of the fact that, so we're talking about similar and not the same, and a lot of people mistake how they write desert or dessert. So I decided to add another one, like to look for the dessert in the desert. And another idea of my editors was to have it go from morning to night. So it kind of starts just about as the sun is about to rise, and the color of the sky gets lighter, obviously with the daytime, and it just gets slightly darker. Oops. As we go along, getting a little darker, and then you see some stars at night. So that gives you another similar but not the same layer.
Yeah. I was looking over the book again this morning, and I noticed the little dessert thing, and I was like, that's great. I didn't notice the sky though, which, again, picture books are great for that. You can go back so many times and kind of see new things and discover, little hidden things the author or the illustrator in this case put in there. Those are super fun. I love that. Now and then, so you talk about Hare, who was kind of a character that you have just been holding on to. The book is all about those similar things, but even though we're also different. And I kind of like that Hare, he starts off like so adamant, Squirrel mistakes him for a rabbit, and he's like, no, I'm a hare. And then throughout the book, you see him, like making mistakes and calling, like, he calls the tortoise a turtle, and he calls the, coyote a jackal, and Squirrel's kind of like, technically. I just love that as kind of characterization. I think it kind of helped, that message of, it's like, you should know who you are and be confident in that, but, you also have to make sure that you're doing your best to recognize other people for what they are.
And this is what, I mean, when you're, obviously everybody kind of knows their friends and personalities. So I don't think it was a conscious thing, but afterwards I realized that I did kind of work a friend into being the character of Jack. Yeah. She's very knowledgeable. And yet there are certain mistakes, but she has so much confidence that she just keeps on going. And I really realized that's who it is the whole time. I was really writing a story about her.
Yep. I had a similar thing happen. A friend of mine just finished reading my book, and she's like, am I Cassie? And I'm like, I don't think I did that consciously, because she was like, because I read myself in Cassie every time she was in a scene. And I'm like, oh, well. Yep. That's fine.
And I'm sure I'm the pain in the neck friend like Chippy who keeps reminding you of the little mistakes you're making.
Yep. You're the one coming in like, technically. Yep. All right. Another question. So this is a picture book, obviously. Has there been any discussion of this being turned into a board book for younger readers?
No, I guess it would will depend on sales. It's only been out for now 6 weeks, I think, almost.
Right.
But it would depend on sales, and if it goes well, to see if we can make that into a board book. But board books are generally shorter. They're usually, if you're making a board book from scratch, they're like 10 to 12 pages max and don't have any end papers or anything. Not that that would make a difference, but there would need to be a few pages or scenes taken out in order to make it into a board book. So I'd be open for it because I think even little kids can enjoy the same thing. I did have a friend send me a video of her 4-year-old grandson reading the book, and he's already a reader, and he could read with drama too, better than some adults that I know. So I could see it, definitely. I could see it as a board book, and if he enjoyed it at 4, then yeah. He even asked if it wasn't already a TV show, he wanted to watch it. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's like, you should talk to my publisher. Tell them, like, it needs to be a TV show.
Yes.
One day, it'll teach kids all about the different animals of the globe.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, why not? All right, and again, this is coming from a personal place. I like talking to illustrators because the art world is something I appreciate, but I have like very limited knowledge of. I saw recently you posted something on Facebook about how you used to like to draw with chalk, and then you found out it was bad for the environment. So my question is, 1, how is it bad for the environment? Because I'm curious. And then 2, what are kind of your preferred, mediums that you create with, either for books or just kind of in general for fun?
Oh, well, as far as the chalk goes, I had read some information on how it can change the chemistry of water in large amounts. So if it seeps into groundwater, because I started to see for big chalk art events where they come together, when so much chalk is being used, so when more than 3 pounds is being used, for it to just be washed off and sent into the groundwater or the wastewater or the stormwater basin, that's can affect it and then could be harmful to aquatic organisms. I don't know the math or the science on all of that, like how much and how it affects them. I do know that chalk is made from calcium sulfates, and sulfates in general are not necessarily good.
Right.
And I know that the coloring of chalk can sometimes be like in many things, food coloring, same thing, can possibly be toxic as well. So just the fact that when you buy chalk and it says non-toxic on it, why are they saying that?
Non-toxic food, exactly.
Yeah. But it was very disappointing to learn, unfortunately, because I like leaving messages for my neighbors on the sidewalk. But
maybe they'll create something else in the future that.
And there may be some out there already, but it's just good to start being aware of it and start learning more about it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And then what kind of stuff do you
like
besides chalk? What kind of stuff?
I love drawing with pencils and markers, and especially fine markers. I don't know why I like that so much. But after I got I was actually at a conference showing my portfolio to a very well-established illustrator who's worked in all mediums, but he saw my portfolio and he said, since you're kind of just starting out, you really need to learn digital as well, just to be able to even fix your own traditional work. And there are different ways to mix it. Some people use collage, some people will draw in pencil, scan it in, and then use it to color in Procreate or Photoshop. But I stuck with Procreate. It's very easy. I don't think I've met a single illustrator who says they don't like it. It's actually quite fun. There's no paper involved. You can do it anywhere. You can take it with you. I did a lot of the final revision work for Lewis, I did in the hospital waiting room. So to be able to do that is really kind of cool. So stuck with that. I think there's a challenge. I mean, even before I started using digital, I didn't really appreciate as much digital art. I found sometimes the resolution, when it came to print of it, the resolution kind of changes a bit. And I didn't really like that. I think people have come around and learned how to fix that in the meantime. But I try to come at my digital in a painterly, experimental way. So I think maybe I don't try to make it look like traditional art. Just try to create it the way with what I've got. And I stick to very, very few brushes. So in Procreate, you have brushes that come with the app itself. And I've pretty much stuck with that. I have bought one set of pencil ones because I'm still looking for the perfect line that looks just like a pencil, but I still haven't found it. But I just stick with a few brushes. There's really just like 3 or 4 that I use, 2 more than all the others. And I think anything that you can kind of like constrain yourself with, if you're only using something minimally, or rather minimal tools, then you learn all the things you can do with those tools. So anyway, it's worked for me.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure that's just the case with everyone. You just kind of have to, make it work for you, figure out how it flows.
I do like to experiment, and I like to attend workshops where I'm pushed to experiment using traditional materials. Or things like Inktober, where you're asked to just post things that you've done in actual ink. So I will try to do that once in a while, but it's a little too easy, and I guess I'm a little too lazy. So it suits me very well.
Yeah, we're all guilty of being lazy from time to time. Do you have any other events set up for I'm a Hare So There that people can see you at?
This week actually I'll be with Children's Book Insider. They have a video interview feature called I think it's just Kidlit Distancing Social that they have. So that is through childrensbookinsider.com with Laura Bacchus, and that will be the 4th, May 4th. Yeah.
All right. Great. Well, so if they didn't, if you watching haven't gotten enough Julie, you can get more Julie there. To just wrap up this lovely conversation we've been having, this is probably every, author, illustrator, what have you, just loves. What is next for you? What's kind of on the horizon?
I just got a new contract to illustrate for someone else. Can't say anything yet until the information's been released, but I'm very excited. It's a very funny book, and that's my favorite, humor, character-driven stories that are funny. Yeah.
Yes,
so,
absolutely.
I'm excited about it. That will come out in probably fall 22.
All right. We have something to look forward to. Awesome. Well, so this has been Julie Rowan-Zoch. She is an author and an illustrator, bookseller, just all around awesome person. Julie, thank you so much for taking the time and chatting with me today.
Thank you very much for inviting me, really.
Of course.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. Again, if you would like to find out more about this book, I'm a Hare So There, and Julie's other books, you can go to bookshop.org, you can go to indiebound.org, or you can visit Julie's website, which is julierowanzoch.wordpress.com. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Speaking Volumes, and we will see you next time.